Many of us are so busy, we are running around doing so many things, dropping kids off at school, cooking, managing teams, reviewing budgets, planning for the future. I mean, the list goes on. But how many of us really, when life hits us, stop and reflect on the big thing that has just happened to us? Whether it is death of a loved one, loss of a job, or we've just gone through a divorce. How many of us actually take time to stop and process that big iceberg that's right before our eyes? If I take a guess, I'd say it's very few of us. Hi, I'm Jolly, and today we are talking about emotional health, specifically the subject of grief. I've invited my dear friend and sister back to the show, Amy Varughese. For those of you who don't know, back in October of 2021, Amy lost her sweet and beautiful cousin, Priscilla George, to suicide due to years of suffering with depression. Her death was such a blow to so many, not only in the Indian community, but in the community at large. I've invited Amy back to the show to explain to us just how real grief is and the importance of dealing with it. Amy, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jolly.
How are you doing?
I'm doing okay, Okay,
good. You know, Amy, as I was doing research for this show, I'd come across some articles and, I found out some interesting facts about grief, specifically that the stages of grief coincide or mimic the stages of dying, and they are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. What would you say? Would you say that's true?
Yeah, and I was actually going to go through that in our lessons too. That is something that I have definitely learned from my therapist as well. So okay. Yeah, I was going to definitely hit that and where I'm at with that and kind of just some key notes about those stages of grief. So
okay, great. And something else that caught my attention was the feeling that when someone is grieving, they have this like tough feeling of helplessness where right. They, to be honest, sometimes beat themselves up. They're right. Constantly asking, what else could I have done? Or the what if thoughts, right?
Right.
Amy, can you share with all of us, everyone who's watching, can you walk us through your journey of grief since your cousin passed away?
Yeah, so before I start, I would like to just kind of share my history a little bit with grief, because I feel like that would help everybody just kind of understand who I am and how I'm processing this current grief in my life. Okay, sure. So the person I've lost in my life has been lost unexpectedly. So I lost my grandfather in a motorcycle accident when I was really young. I lost a friend in an apartment fire a couple of years ago. I lost my first baby, through a miscarriage 8 years ago, unexpectedly. And right before my cousin passed away, we lost a beloved teacher just 3 weeks before Priscilla passed away to COVID. And so the unexpectedly is been the big word with my losses. Also, if you listen to my previous interview with you, Jolly, you know that I've had a journey with my brain and mental health, going through the ups and downs of depression. So when my cousin passed away by suicide, it just hit me in a way I've never imagined before. Not saying that the people who don't struggle with depression or their grief is not significant. I'm just saying that for me, it hit so close to home. The pain I have felt since she has been gone is something in my life that I have never quite experienced. I'm so glad that God showed me the other side of suffering with depression after 18 years. Last year, right before Priscilla passed away, from the months of March to September, I was able to live in pure joy. I was no longer going through the ups and downs of depression. And I'm so glad he showed me that, because that's what keeps me going. I could not imagine going through this huge loss and not having to see that side. And so I always think Jesus was so kind to me for showing me the other side of suffering with depression. And in the church, and I feel like even at the funeral, people talk about the hope in our Lord, the fact that we're going to see our loved ones again, which is great. That's so, so great. But I have never heard anyone actually talk about what do we do and how do we live on this earth without our loved ones until Jesus comes back.
That's good.
After the funeral, I realized I was starting to have panic attacks again. I felt like I was going to lose someone else in my life unexpectedly. And I remember hearing Rick Warren speak because he lost his son in the same way. He said, either you're going to become better or you're going to become bitter. Wow. And I knew right then, like I needed to get help. And so since the funeral, I've been getting help through therapy.
Amy, what would you say, especially to our viewers, mainly who are women leaders, women of influence, what are the 3 biggest lessons so far? I know that you're not done with the process, but what are the 3 biggest lessons you've learned thus far in grieving?
Yeah, so the keynote is that I don't think there's an expiration date to grieve, right? Like, I wish there was. I wish like I could say like, March 1st, like this is all going to be done. I think this is an ongoing process, right? So you mentioned this earlier in the interview, but the stages of grief is a real thing. And I want to say, I'm not a psychologist or a therapist by any means, but this is just what I want to share, what I've learned through therapy and my own journey through grieving. So yeah, you said the 5 stages. So denial, that's when your body is like normal reaction to rationalize overwhelming emotions. Like you're in, like this didn't happen. You then go through anger, where the pain of the loss kind of starts taking like a firm take hold, like and you're kind of angry as to why this all happened to you and your family. Bargaining. So the what if scenarios, like what if I did more, like the guilt kind of kicks in. Depression, that's the next one after that. And that's when you realize like the true extent of that loss. Acceptance. And that is when you realize like life is never going to be the same, but you'll find a way to continue to be enriched by your loved one's presence. So a couple things that I just want to note that I've kind of learned from the stages of grief is that you can be in 2 different stages at the same time. So an example, one of the examples, one of my well-meaning friends, after my cousin passed away, she was like, Amy, the good thing is like, we're talking about mental health in our community now. And you would think like that would make me happy. Like I was like, grateful she said that, but when I brought it to my therapist, I was like, I don't know why I'm so mad about this. Like, I don't know why I'm mad at what she said. Yeah. And she said, Amy, you can be hopeful for your community. You can be hopeful for your Indian community that they are talking about it. But at the same time, you can be angry that we are just starting to talk about mental health and that your cousin had to be the one that passed away. So you could be at 2 different stages at the same time. You can go back and forth in your grief stages. So like there are times where I was like in shock. Then there are times where I'm like feeling really guilty. Like I could have done more, especially as her older like cousin sister who has experienced the same journey, that I could have done more. I even bargained with God. Like I would say, can you bring Priscilla back from the dead like you did Lazarus? Like, can you do that?
Yeah.
Right? Bargaining with God. I was like, if you do that, I'll do anything for you, and then there were times where my depression got so deep and I would just weep for the loss I had. I would find myself like in a fetal position. I found myself weeping for my cousins, my aunt, my uncle, Priscilla's daughters. I found myself often weeping for those, especially that struggle with our brain health and our mental health, because Priscilla was such a huge advocate even in her suffering. So I feel like we lost someone who was a huge advocate, and that's huge. Another motto I heard from a preacher, like I was saying, like there's no no expiration to this grief. And that's why it's okay to get the help you need to process this grief. And everyone also grieves differently. So I may be in a stage of depression where my sisters may be in the stage of still shock.
Sure.
So everyone will be grieving differently, and we just can't compare someone's grieving. We can't be like, oh, she's grieving more, we're all in different stages of that.
You can't say, oh, she must have loved Priscilla more because she's grieving differently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I didn't realize that, but it makes sense that you can kind of wax and wane, kind of go back and forth between the stages, and there's no right stage to be in at a certain time. It's just a process, and everybody arrives at different stages at different times. Can I ask, Amy, what stage, if you feel comfortable sharing, do you feel like you're in right now?
Honestly, I would say like I'm in the stage of depression again, unfortunately. But I'm working through it. It's not like I have an amazing support system. I am going to therapy. I'm in this fight. For myself, my kids, my family. And for Priscilla, like, I feel like I promised her one thing at that funeral. And I said, I'm going to honor you. I'm going to take your message, for the rest of my life. And so I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that happens. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I realized that it's okay to be like that. Like, I still love Jesus. I didn't lose my faith. I didn't lose my hope in God, but my feelings are raw. My feelings are real, and Jesus can handle that. That's what, like, he wants us to, it's okay. It's okay to be there. It's okay to not always be this, like, we're going to see her again. We're going to see her again. Like, it's okay to be like, man, like this really hurts. Like, this really is a huge loss,
I love that. I love how you say it's okay to really not be okay. It's okay to not be perfect and to be positive. And, it's okay to feel your feelings.
100%. 100%.
Process it. That's good. Amy, why is it so important? We as women, we tend to, things happen to us and we don't take the time to process. We don't stop and grieve the big things that have happened to us. We just bum rush through them and we say, I got to keep going. It's okay. Like, it's going to be fine. Why is that dangerous to do? Why is it important to grieve?
Because honestly, it's going to catch up. It's going to catch up to you in some way. It's going to eat, and most of the times I feel like it's going to catch up in a very angry way, and it's going to be towards people that you actually care about and love, and you're going to get worn out. You are, because grieving is such a process. Like, and if you just suppress it, that doesn't mean it's going away. You're going to have to deal with it at some point. And so I think it's so important for us as women, especially, like, no one's going to tell you like, hey, you need to schedule this. You need to schedule like when you're going to therapy. You got to do it. No one's going to say, oh, you need to schedule self-care. No one's going to do that for you. You have to do it.
And if you don't, going to give you permission to take care of yourself.
Right. You have to. And so, I mean, there's, and like you were saying, like the other parts of, the lessons that I've learned with this is like, also guarding your heart through this grieving process. So like Rick Warren also said, I love what he said. He said, when someone is going through something tough, the best thing you can do is show up and shut up.
Wow. Oh, I like that. Show up and shut up.
And I just love that, because that's exactly, like, honestly, there's nothing we can say when someone has lost someone. Like, there's nothing that's going to bring like extreme comfort. And the best healing someone gave me was when they would just call me and they would just listen to me cry or talk over on the phone. And I had a few friends who did that. Like, I even had a friend, she gave me this bottle, and she didn't say much, but it, in it, she just wrote a little note that said, God is holding every tear. And I loved it because, like, for me, I'm such a visualized learner. And so every time I look at it, I know that my tears are not being wasted, like God is actually seeing that. And so that like just meant so much to me. And I've also learned not to share like my pain with just everyone, and keep it in my circle to guard my heart, because there's only a few people in my circle right now that I trust with my heart. And I remember when one of my friends, she lost her cousin to a motorcycle accident. She said, it's crazy how I feel stuck in this grief and the world keeps moving on. So for me, I had to get off Facebook. And it's not anybody's fault, but it's been 3 months. I haven't been on since Priscilla passed away. And the reason why is because it just looked like everybody's life was moving on while I was still stuck. Yeah. So I had to get off and guard my heart. And because once again, this could either make me better or it can make me bitter.
Wow. I love it. I love that. I think so many times people mean well when because it's so uncomfortable. It's so awkward. What do you want to be nice. You want to say something beneficial. But the truth is we don't have to say anything. There is power in silence.
Yeah, and there's power in presence. There's power of just like showing up, there's so much power in that. And we were never taught that way, right? And so like, that was like one of the last lessons I learned is like, it's okay to feel. It's okay to cry. It's okay to take this to God. He can handle it. Mm-hmm. So after Priscilla passed away, I found myself often not wanting to pray or read my Bible. Mm-hmm. I felt like I don't really relate to anyone in the Bible with this loss and my feeling. and then like God showed me something different. When we grew up in the church, we learned about all these people in the Bible, but we didn't learn when they felt disappointed in God. Like, I really wish we did. We learned about Job being this man of faith. We learned about Hannah praying for her son. We learned about David being a man after God's heart. But I never learned about their cries and laments. Like, Hannah had been struggling 10 years or more to cry out for that baby. And are you telling me like, every time it was like, God, I know you're just going to be faithful and bring me this baby? No, her cries were like, it was hard cries. They were bitter. They were weak. She was weeping. Job lost everything. I mean, one of his cries, he literally wished he was dead. David, we read the Psalms every day on Sunday morning, but all those were laments. Those were all him crying out. Yeah. And God welcomed it all. God welcomed it all. He wants us to bring every single cry. And there were times where I literally could not read my Bible, Jolly. And all I did was this is the beauty of technology these days, is I had the Bible being read to me, Wow. And there were times I did not feel like going to church, but I would just show up and the Lord would just always comfort me through friends. And I would just cry in my friends' arms. And, it really felt like the touch of God. There were times I would go, this was an amazing thing that happened after Priscilla passed away. I went and checked out a book on grief, and this note card someone had wrote fell out of that book. Oh, wow. And it said, he who began a good work in me will carry it unto completion until the day of Christ Jesus. Wow. I mean, what are the chances of me getting that certain book and then this note card falling out? Like, this was something that happened after she passed away. So it was just amazing. And that's why I said God welcomes all of it. Yeah.
And I love how God meets you wherever you're at, whatever stage you are at in grief. Right now, God meets you and he can handle it all. Whether you are screaming, whether you are crying, whether you are in denial, hey, that denial is actually a part of the process, and God sees you and he calls you good. And he says, you are loved and it is okay. You are going to make it, wherever you're at. So I love that about God, is that he he's so big, he can handle every stage, and he can handle anything and everything we throw at him. And that's actually what he wants. He
Right.
wants us to be sincere and real and raw, no matter
Right.
how it looks.
Yeah. And I felt like, because I kept hearing, this verse said at the funeral, I was like, God is close to the brokenhearted. God is close to the brokenhearted. And honestly, like once again, you would think that something like that would bring me comfort, but I was just like, I just went up to God. I was like, I don't feel you close. Like, I don't feel like, there were days like where I was in the car just screaming and crying because I was like, how did this happen to our family? How did I lose my sweet cousin? Like, how is it that I'm never going to see her walking on this earth again? Like, they just brought it all to him. And one thing that I started doing, because sometimes I couldn't even pray, is I have a journal that, the therapist encouraged me to like kind of just keep my notes. And that's what I did. I started writing out my prayers, in there. And there were times where I was just going off, in all kinds of ways. And it felt so good because it felt like I was releasing,
That's
instead
right.
of like, just kind of like just suffocating it,
Suppressing it.
Yeah, suppressing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Amy, what has shocked you the most about the grief process, whether it is in regards to yourself that you've learned about the process or even about others?
I feel like, I think one thing that has really shocked me is when I was in therapy is that how like it's something, it goes beyond just the grieving process. Like, so what I mean is like, when I went to therapy, I realized like there were things that came up from my childhood. Like it actually like kind of released other things that I didn't even know I was holding on to, And I think like it's just a big, long healing process. It's messy. It's like, it's not like this clean slate, like, oh, we're just gonna be, good and all that. No, it's messy. It's very, very messy. I mean, there were things that came up from my childhood that I didn't know I didn't deal with, because of this. There was some kind of anger, even like when, like I said, when my friend had said that, I was like, I'm so angry at my community, why we're just talking about mental health, like that came up. I'm just being raw and real with you right now, but it's like that even came up, So it was just like, there were just so many like different things that had come up that I personally had not even like ever dealt with, And I remember us talking one time, I believe, and I was like, and I remember you saying like, you were crying for the younger Amy, like the Amy that was going through all this like years ago, So it wasn't just, it was like, it brought so much back that I didn't even know,
Was
like
there.
it was there. No.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what, pain tends to do. That's what, the things that happens in our lives tend to do. It brings up the stuff that we haven't dealt with, and I think it's a lot of times it's for God to sift us. It's for God to purify us. It's for God to get us onto the journey, continuing the journey and continuing the good work, right? That He
Yeah.
has called us towards. It's beautiful. Amy, looking back at Priscilla's life, can you look at and think about the things that you admire most about her and see, because hindsight is 2020, right? When someone passes away, it's really like you are forced to reflect. And looking back at Priscilla's life, what things do you admire about her that you want to implement into your own life and carry forward?
The more and more like I think about her every day. Like there are times where I think about her throughout the day, like almost every hour. She was like, the fact that she could fight, her mental health, her brain health for as long as that she did. What a warrior. And in that, she was encouraging other people. She was telling the church to wake up. People are struggling with their brain health. These were her constant, like, if you looked through her Facebook post, her, just the things that she stood for, you could see like she was telling the church, wake up, people are dying from this, you know? And this is with her going through such a pit in her own life. Like, this is her walking through postpartum depression. This is her walking through like her suffering. And with how much her brain was tortured, she was still trying to help others. Like, I mean, when you look at the definition of a warrior, you know, she fought till she couldn't fight anymore. Yeah. And to me, like, as somebody, you know, who has been on the same journey, but even if not, like, even if you haven't walked through that journey of depression and anxiety and all of that, like, you look at her life and you're just like, man, like 15 years of going up and down with this whole battle, 15 years, and more than 15 years actually. And it's just like, in that she was trying to be a blessing to other people. She was trying to like make things so personable, like, and that was why, like, even after her death, I was trying to find a way to honor her in the best way I could, and the best way that I knew she would honor people, you know? Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just like, she was one of those people, she like seeked out how to be a blessing to each person. Like, she wanted people to feel seen. Like, feel like you're not just another number, you're not just another person, like, you mean something. Like she would go, and her my uncle owns a Christian bookstore, and she would find out the meanings of people's names, and she would go and give that to people's to individuals. Like, who does that? You know, Priscilla does. Yeah. And so like, one of the things we did after her passing through our ministry was we sent out care packages in her name. And initially it was only supposed to be like 33, because that's how old she is. And I wanted to send 33. We ended up giving close to 50. Wow. But what we did was we had people look up the names of these people's meanings. So that's what Priscilla would do. Wow. And story reached to 50 women, 50 different women. And I've gotten notes back from people, and they're just like, your cousin, like, what an amazing woman she was. And that's exactly right. She was an amazing, amazing woman. And yeah, so I just, it's been a journey, because I feel like we lost someone that was so, so precious and so, just so pure, like so pure in the heart, you know? That's who she was.
I love that. You know, as I was thinking about you and, you know, the show, I just felt that I could kind of see the both of you. I feel like Priscilla is that third person in a relay race. And she says, Amy, I'm done. I've done all I can do. And yeah. She hands you the baton and she says, now you go. And you run. You run with passion, you run with fire, but you go and win this race for us. Win this race, you know? So, and I just want to tell you, Amy, keep shining your light for Priscilla. Keep shining your light, not just for her, but for all of those people who need to hear what you are saying. I know right now you're making her so proud, and she's smiling down in heaven right now. I just want to thank you so much for being here on the show. It is always such a pleasure to have you here. I love how straight to the heart you get. You don't, beat around the bush, and I so appreciate that about you. I'd love to end with this quote that I thought was fitting for our discussion, and it comes from American author Washington Irving. He said this: "There is a sacredness in tears. They are not the mark of weakness, but of power. They speak more eloquently than 10,000 tongues. They are the messengers of overwhelming grief, of deep contrition, and of unspeakable love. And our tears matter. They're not a sign of weakness, but they are a sign, I believe, of people who have loved deeply. So, Amy, continue on your journey of grieving. I know that better things are going to be coming your way. And I love you, friend.
Love you too.
Thank you so much. And friends, if you'd like to connect with Amy, her information will be down below in the show notes. And she does have a ministry. Feel free to give to her ministry. It's called One Mother to Another. You can find it on Instagram and Facebook, I believe. And let me know in the comment section what you thought about this video. Let me know how you could relate to Amy, what she said to you that maybe stuck out to you. Give me a thumbs up, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and then let me know what other questions you might have about grief. All right, thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.